That's 1800. Anyway, so 3100 BC, okay, the first king is crowned. It happens to be right around the time when Western civilization says they were created, within 1,000 years. So what we deduce in history is that they were just created within that 1,000 years. They just came out of those mountains within that 1,000-year period before Menes was appointed king. And what mystery suggests is that Menes was appointed king because they had been coming out of those mountains for that last 1,000 years, uncivilized. And so by the next 1,000-year period, Imhotep, it was necessary for Imhotep to begin to teach them through the mystery schools. And then by 1800 BC, the Ahmose Papyrus came out, which was teaching them mathematics. This was all necessary for the Western world to understand what we kept from lip to ear for 50,000 years. This became necessary. So once the 1st century AD came about, the man that they call Hermes Trismegistus, or Hermes, or Thoth, or Imhotep, as we would call him, wrote 42 books. And those 42 books were called the curriculum for the mystery schools. Okay, and he taught in Alexandria until within that time frame between the 3rd century BC and 1st century AD, the libraries of Alexandria were burned. And only 17 books of Hermes remained. Okay? Now we at 1st century AD. Okay? So remember, they told you 580 BC was the beginning of written mathematics. We just showed you 50,000 years of unrecorded life. 3100 BC, Menes taking control of the savages that had just been spawned within the last 1,000 years. Then 2580 BC, very clear proofs the pyramids are being sprung out. 2,000 years before they say written mathematics began. The reason why they're saying written mathematics began at 580 BC is to destroy the rest of the history. You understand what I'm saying? It's to destroy our inclusion. To say it started in 580. So what we're saying is 2,000 years before that, you had Imhotep building the pyramids. And then in the 18th century BC, you had the Ahmose Papyrus, which is used for all of the mathematics in the Western civilization. And then by the 1st century AD, you had who the Greeks called Hermes Trismegistus, who was still, in mystery we say that's still Imhotep, same guy. How can he live that long from 2580 BC to the 1st century AD? How can he live for thousands of years? Well, examples are Melchizedek in the Bible, Idris in the Quran, Enoch in the Bible, Al-Qidr in Islamic tradition. All over the world there's traditions of these people that have been for so long. You know, they give them 300 years. They give Hermes 300 years at least in the 1st century AD. So what we're saying is that from 2580 BC, Imhotep was teaching all the way up until they say written mathematics began in around 580 BC.
So who does the Western civilization say came up with written mathematics? The Western civilization?
They say the Greeks did.
The Greeks? Wow.
They say the Greeks did. So again, we've just shown, and this is only the first paragraph. We're only breaking down the first paragraph, and what was said was that they say that written mathematics began in 580. So we just wanted to destroy that.
Which was after the pyramids was built.
Yeah, a great while after the pyramids. The pyramids were built again 2580 BC.
I just have a quick question.
Yes.
I thought that Menes came from Upper Kim.
He came from Upper Kim, which is the south.
Okay, so south.
Okay, Upper.
Egypt.
I mean, it's not because
Well, what's called
when I think south, I think
Egypt.
that
Oh,
part.
okay.
I think upper. I mean,
The Upper Kim is the south.
Kim is Egypt.
Okay.
like literally the south.
Yeah, just real quick. I am the worst artist ever. Everybody knows that. Every time I do this, people laugh.
Draw that horse's head.
Don't laugh at me, y'all. I'm not that good. Okay? That's the closest I can get to Africa. Y'all gonna have to deal with it. Okay? This I want to call the Delta region, and this I want to call the Nile Valley, or the Nile River. Okay? At least, you know, we can identify that. Okay? What this is now called Egypt, It used to be called Kemet. And since the Nile Valley flows from the south to the north, this part was called Upper,
Okay.
and this part was called Lower.
There we go.
So Menes was the king of Upper Kem, which was in the south, or southern Egypt. Upper Kem or southern Egypt. I know I looked at that one page in the Destruction of Black Civilization for like a week. I'm like, how does this work? It just really messed me up. But once you get it, it's like, okay. So what was said was 2,000 years before written mathematics. Now we talking just written. So we placing that with Imhotep, the written part. They even called Imhotep the world's first genius, physician, engineer, architect, surgeon. His symbol, the staff with the two snakes around it, is the symbol of Hermes, which is the medicine, American Medical Association.
Yes. Oh.
So this was
What was his name?
Imhotep.
Because they use that
Or
in the
Hermes.
medical with the staff with the two
Yes.
snakes.
Yeah, they attribute it to Hermes, Hermes Trismegistus. We venture to say that that's Imhotep, the same character from
Okay.
2,500 years before.
And he discovered the written mathematics.
He distributed written mathematics.
So you're saying he was a scientist, an engineer, and all that?
All of that. He was, and they even call him the world's first physician, surgeon, engineer, architect,
Wow.
mathematician, and some of them even call him the god of these things.
Wow.
Yeah, so I mean, he was huge.
You can find this up on the internet?
Absolutely, Imhotep.
Wow.
Imhotep. IMOTP or
What
IMHOTEP.
is it?
MOTEP.
M-O-T. Oh, okay.
And then Hermes.
Okay.
Okay, now what they'll tell you is Imhotep was, 2,000 something years before the birth of Christ, third dynasty in Egypt, and then Hermes was between the 3rd century BC and 1st century AD, which is, a lot of years later. But what we're suggesting is the same people teaching the same thing that was known for 50,000 years before then. Okay?
So you're saying mathematics was really the creation of the pyramids and everything. So everything was done through mathematics first?
Have to be.
It had to.
You had to.
No, I'm just asking a question.
Yeah, I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Not to say it like that,
Yeah.
but I mean.
Yeah,
Yeah.
with the pyramids and everything, and
I mean,
okay.
with any architecture just begins with angles,
That's true.
you
That's
know.
true. We don't look. Okay.
yeah, angles and numbers and all of that, is necessary. Not just that, they preserve bodies up until this day.
So you have geometry, like you say, architect and everything, and
Architecture, engineering, everything is stemmed from mathematics. So the existence of Imhotep and existence of the pyramid shows that the mathematics was there far before what their beginning is. Now, we're going to look into a little bit how and why they place around 580 BC, why they place the beginning around there. Okay? Miss Beatrice Lumpkin goes on to say, 1,000 years pass between the end of the Hellenistic period and the European Renaissance in mathematics. 1,000 years passed between the end of the Hellenistic period and the European Renaissance in mathematics. It was a rich period known as the Muslim hegemony, which means like the Muslims were ruling at that time, in mathematics and science. But Western historians have largely ignored this period of development which took place outside of Christian Europe. Europe in this period, except for more Spain, remained at a relatively low cultural level. Now, the Muslim hegemony, yeah. So now we're going from this, when we break down this timeline, this section of our timeline, what we're going to find is the reasons why they're placing their beginnings around the time that they're placing their beginnings. What it is this was the dawn of, within the next 200 years, and they give themselves 200 years to practice, I suppose, is how they explain this. But within the next 200 years, you have the Hellenistic period coming up. And they mark it around 323 BC, which is Alexander the Great's death, or Alexander's death, around 323 BC. So they give themselves 200 years to prepare for the Hellenistic period.